June 11, 1962. Three prisoners at Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary disappear into the night, leaving behind only a handful of crude tools, a hole in the wall, and a mystery that has yet to be solved. For over 60 years, investigators have searched for answers, but the fate of these men remains unknown. Before we start, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a deep dive into history's greatest mysteries. Now, let's get into it.
Naturally intrigued.
Alcatraz was not just a prison, it was a fortress. Located on a small, rocky island in San Francisco Bay, it was designed to hold the worst of the worst, criminals too dangerous or too skilled at escaping to be contained elsewhere. It was surrounded by freezing waters, deadly currents, and a watchful security system that made escape nearly impossible. Many tried, but none had ever successfully made it out. At least, that's what officials claimed. That all changed when Frank Morris and the Anglin brothers decided they would not die on Alcatraz. Before they were locked inside the rock, they were men shaped by their upbringing, circumstances, and choices. Understanding their past gives insight into why they took such a massive risk in trying to escape. Frank Lee Morris was born on September 1, 1926 in Washington, D.C., but he never had a stable home. An orphan by age 11, he was shuffled through the foster system, growing up in an environment where survival meant adapting to difficult situations. Morris had an IQ of 133, ranking him in the top 2% of the population. A genius, but one who used his intellect for crime rather than academics. His criminal record began in his teenage years, starting with petty thefts, but his crimes escalated over time. By his late 20s, he had been convicted of armed robbery, burglary, and narcotics possession. He was known for his incredible ability to escape from prisons, earning a reputation as one of the most elusive inmates in the system. He was sentenced to Alcatraz in 1960 after escaping from the Louisiana State Penitentiary, one of the toughest prisons in the country at the time. But Alcatraz wasn't just about punishment, it was a message. If you ended up on the rock, it meant the government had given up on you. Morris, however, saw it as just another challenge. John William Anglin and Clarence Anglin were born in Donaldsonville, Georgia, but their family moved to Florida when they were young. Coming from a family of 13 children, the Anglin brothers were raised as farm workers, helping their parents pick crops in the summer before heading off to school in the fall. They were strong, resourceful, and physically resilient, traits that would later become key in their survival. As kids, they developed exceptional swimming abilities, often diving into the icy waters of Lake Michigan for fun. They were known as risk-takers, constantly pushing their limits. But as they grew older, those risks took on a criminal nature. By their late teens, John and Clarence had started robbing banks, but their methods were unusual. They were known for targeting banks after hours, breaking in when no one was around to avoid violence. They were eventually caught in 1956 during a failed robbery attempt and sentenced to 20 years in prison. Like Morris, the Anglin brothers had a history of escaping from prisons. After multiple escape attempts from a federal prison in Atlanta, they were sent to Alcatraz in the early 1960s, placed under maximum security to ensure they would never break free again. But that only gave them time to plan their most ambitious escape yet. From a psychological perspective, the three men shared key traits that made their escape attempt almost inevitable. Morris, with his high IQ, had a problem-solving mindset. His ability to analyze weaknesses in security, improvise tools, and plan ahead made him the leader of the escape operation. The Anglin brothers, though not as academically gifted, were incredibly resourceful. They were used to harsh conditions, hard labor, and finding creative ways to survive. All three men had a deep distrust of authority, particularly the prison system. They had spent years locked away, and rather than breaking their spirit, it hardened their determination to escape. Psychological studies on prisoners have shown that long-term confinement often reinforces risk-taking behavior rather than deterring it. The more they were punished, the more they wanted to beat the system. Being placed in Alcatraz was essentially a life sentence. While none of them were on death row, they knew they might never see freedom again. For them, escape was not just about getting out, it was about survival. For 6 months, Morris and the Anglin brothers carefully worked on their plan in complete secrecy. They excavated the ventilation ducts in their cells, using homemade tools, a combination of sharpened spoons, broken vacuum cleaner motors, and stolen nail clippers. Each night, they dug a little more, hiding their progress with painted cardboard replicas of the vents. Once they had access to the utility corridor, they built a secret workshop where they stitched together over 50 raincoats to form a makeshift raft. The prison had no formal inventory system for raincoats, meaning they could steal them without raising suspicion. To trick the guards, they created lifelike dummy heads made of plaster, paint, and human hair from the prison barbershop. On the night of their escape, they placed the heads in their beds to make it appear they were still asleep. Finally, on June 11, 1962, everything was ready. Under the cover of night, they crawled through the holes in their cells, climbed up pipes to the roof, and carefully maneuvered down the side of the building. They made their way to the shoreline, inflated their raft, and disappeared into the dark waters of San Francisco Bay. The official FBI report claims they drowned in the bay. The waters were cold, the currents were strong, and survival was unlikely, but no bodies were ever found. Over the years, evidence surfaced that suggests they may have made it. A stolen boat was reported nearby just days after their escape. In 1975, the FBI received a letter from a man claiming to be John Anglin, saying that he and his brother had survived and were living in Brazil. Then in 2015, a photograph emerged, allegedly showing the Anglin brothers alive in Brazil in the 1970s. Experts remain divided on whether the photo is real, but if it is, it would mean they pulled off one of the greatest prison escapes in history. So what do you think? Did Morris and the Anglin brothers defy the odds and escape Alcatraz, living in secret for decades? Or did the bay swallow them whole, making this one of the greatest unsolved mysteries of all time? Let me know your theories in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into true crime and mystery, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
Naturally intrigued.